Hi, this is Jenny from Pure Homemaking, and today I'm going to do a quick video tutorial on how to make kombucha tea. Previously I talked a little bit about some of the health benefits of kombucha, but I'm not going to get into this to any more of the health benefits on the video. I just want to quickly show you how to make it. So right now I have a couple of tea bags brewing, and kombucha tea is basically it's tea, and you can make it with either black tea or green tea or a combination of the two. You always want to have at least one black tea bag in it, and the reason for that is it just helps the tea to form better. I don't exactly know why. You also want to have some sugar, just some white sugar. I know it's not ideal to use white sugar, but in this case, all of the sugar is going to be eaten up during the fermentation process with the SCOBY, which is actually just a bacteria and yeast. And so it eats the sugar, and you're not left with hardly any sugar left over, if any at all, depending on how long you allow it to ferment. So the basic recipe is between 4 and 5 tea bags. I'm sorry, between 4 and 7 tea bags. I usually use about 6. And again, it can be any combination of green and black. I like to do 3 each. So you want to brew it with 3 quarts of hot boiling water, and you want to let it sit probably 10 to 15 minutes. And then you want to add your sugar, and it's 1 cup of sugar, so you can go ahead and put that in while it's hot. It makes it easier to dissolve. So I'm going to go ahead and pour that in now. Oh, looks like I have a little bit of liquid left in there. And you can kind of, this is pretty easy, but so you're just stirring it around. I'm just going to let it finish brewing. It's been brewing probably for, I don't know, about 4 minutes or so. After it's done brewing, you want to let the water get to room temperature, and it's very important that it's not hot. It's very important that it's actually at room temperature, not cold, not hot, because when you put the SCOBY in with it, it can actually destroy some of the beneficial things about the tea, like the bacteria and the yeast. So you want it to be at room temperature. So this is just about dissolved. It's also important that everything is sterilized before you start. And it's also best if you use wood, but if you have stainless steel, that works okay also. So this is dissolved pretty much. It's also important, never use honey, never use any flavored tea. You can either use just regular white granulated sugar, or the organic is fine too. That's what I use. So I'm going to let that sit at room temperature for a while, and while that's doing that, I'm going to show you the next step that you're going to take. After that's come to room temperature, you want to go ahead and take your gallon jar. You can either use a gallon-sized jar, or you can use one of the 4-quart glass measuring bowls. It's just important that you don't use anything ceramic that has any kind of lead in it, because the tea can cause it to leach in there, so it's very important that you just use clear glass. Okay, so when that's done, you're going to go ahead and combine everything in here. You're going to combine your 3 quarts of room temperature tea that's already been sweetened with the sugar into your jar. And again, you want to start with a clean, sterilized jar. Sometimes I'll put it in the oven, a little while ahead of time, and just for about 5 minutes, just to sterilize it if I'm worried about it, because you don't want to introduce any bad bacteria in there. So it's always important to start off clean. So once you do that, you're going to add in your kombucha SCOBY and about 2 cups of a previous batch. If you get a starter from someone, it'll usually come with enough tea to start it off. If by chance you don't have enough of the tea, you can always substitute it with plain white vinegar. And you want to add about 2 cups of that. So you're going to take your SCOBY out, and it looks, here you can get a little closer here, and it looks, a good SCOBY looks kind of weird at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's really not. And don't be afraid to touch it. I mean, it looks a little bit weird, I'll admit that, but this is a really good SCOBY. This has, you can see a couple different layers there. What happens is, this is called the mother. What happens is every time you make a new batch, a new SCOBY will grow on top of it, basically just like a layer. And eventually you can just kind of peel it off and give one to a friend, just take one in the fridge if you choose to do a continuous ferment, or just toss it. The stuff on the bottom looks like it might be a little bit scary, like, oh, maybe that's a bad SCOBY, but it's not. It actually means it's very healthy. It's excess yeast, and that's actually very good. So you want it to look nice and clean. It'll also take on the shape of the jar, so if you were to do it in a bowl, it would just be longer and thinner. So you're going to go ahead and add your 2 cups into the jar. So I'm just going to measure out 2 cups here. About 2 cups. Doesn't need to be completely exact, but just about 2 cups. And you're going to pour it into your jar or bowl or whatever you're using. And then I'm not going to add this yet because I want to go ahead and let the tea come to room temperature. But once it does, you just plop it all in and you put the SCOBY on top. It's okay if it floats down to the bottom, or if it goes on the side, that's fine too. And then while you're fermenting it, you can either cover it with a coffee filter like this, with a rubber band on top of it. You can use a tea towel. You can basically use anything. You just want to you want to make sure that there's some airflow that goes through. And then you want to place it in a quiet place. How strong you like it depends on how long you ferment it. You can kind of do a taste test depending on how warm your house is after a couple of days and see. And you also, once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to smell it and say, oh, I think that might be ready. So if it's goes slightly on the, if you prefer it slightly on the vinegary side, just let it go a little bit longer. If you want it slightly sweeter, you don't let it ferment as long. General rule of thumb is I've had it done in 4 days over the summer, but when it's cooler and your house is cooler, it may take up to a week or sometimes even longer. But it's most important to know that you just make sure that you leave it in a quiet, undisturbed place. Every time you move it, it's going to, basically, you're going to start forming a new baby SCOBY on top of it. It doesn't affect the tea, but it's just not as neat and conformed. So you're going to have it just like that, and you're going to put it just in a quiet place. I usually like to put it on a counter somewhere, or a good place can be on the top of a refrigerator where it doesn't get a whole lot of draft. It doesn't need to be dark, anything like that, but it's really very simple, and then you get to enjoy a wonderful, slightly carbonated beverage that you can give to your kids, you can give to yourself. I do recommend that if it's your first time drinking kombucha tea, that you start off pretty slowly, because it does have a relatively strong detoxifying effect. So just start small. You can also do flavorings if you don't like the taste of it just as is. You can always put like frozen raspberries in it, or any other kind of fruit, or you can mix it with water or anything else. But we can get into that later, and about double fermenting at another time. But this is the basic rundown of how you make kombucha tea. And yeah, so thank you for watching my video.